press for something additional, such as fewer restrictions on industrial boilers or drug testing for recipients of unemployment benefits?
You know, I think the foremost thing that we want is an extension of the unemployment tax cut. But I think on the other hand, when a train is leaving the station in this town, you do tend to try to put as much freight on it as possible. So it's possible that the Keystone pipeline or some of these other energy issues that relate to jobs may be included in it. It's not the first time, but I think, Martin, we're ready to negotiate. And I think that's what December was all about. We still have till March 1st. I think the bigger issue right now isn't us putting on extra things as much as discussing where the money comes from, whether it's a tax increase or we offset it through spending cuts elsewhere.
Okay, well, it was a nice admission there that you'll throw as much onto the train as possible. As you know, you just said that. As you know, the payroll tax cut is deemed by both sides to be crucial to the ongoing economic recovery, as was the bailout of the motor industry in this country. Now, I have to ask you, sir, do you stand by your decision to oppose the auto bailout, or would you now accept that in saving an estimated 1.4 million jobs, this was the right thing to do and you were badly mistaken?
No, Martin, I think I was right, and I think that I would take that vote again tomorrow. And the reason why is if General Motors had have used the existing bankruptcy laws, they could have reorganized, they could have saved a lot of the jobs, and they could have moved on and been leaner for it. As is, they got a huge tax dollar infusion. One of your previous guests was talking about now they're running around on this victory lap. It's an advertising campaign subsidized by taxpayers. So Ford made it without a bailout. I think General Motors should have.
So your personal view is that you would have continued to vote against it. Okay. Why did you...
And Martin, remember, yes, I also voted for the Wall Street bailout.
Yes,
so
I remember.
Consistent.
Why did you oppose the bailout but co-sponsor an earmark of some $6.3 million to replenish the beach on Tybee Island where you happen to own a property?
Well, you got to remember this, Martin. When a hurricane comes, as much sand as you have between you and the structures, the less damage the taxpayers are going to pay. We saw that in New Orleans when you had the big hurricane and people had built structures actually below sea level. So in Tybee Island, Georgia, there has been an ongoing beach renourishment program going on for 40 years, I might add. The beach renourishment part, my house isn't even on the ocean. I think the story in the Washington Post is a little bit ridiculous, but you know, listen, I understand anything's fair game. Our house, and I would invite you to Google it on Google Earth and see how small it is. It's not even on the ocean.
Well, I have actually Googled it, sir, and I've seen that it's about 900 feet from the ocean. But given the fact that property values have been declining, you must have known that $6.3 million of refurbishment would have raised the value of your $142,000 property. And I have to ask you again, you oppose the bailout of the motor industry, and yet you secure $6.3 million for a beach where your own property sits.
Well, first of all, as you have pointed out, the property value has gone down. Secondly, far more importantly, is that the beach renourishment program is a national program. This is one that gets a state match, a local match, and federal tax dollars invest in it. And the reason why, Martin, is because we have the National Flood Insurance Program. If you do not have a lot of sand between the ocean and the structures, then you're going to pay more damage when a hurricane comes. We saw that in Katrina. And post-Katrina, what we're doing is raising the cost of flood insurance, making sure beach renourishment is up to date. And the suggestion that it was self-motivated would be ridiculous. But again, let me say this.
I just have to interrupt you for a moment, because one of the things I'm finding very difficult to get my head around, sir, is that you actually wanted to have this refurbishment of the beach, which you've so eloquently explained for environmental reasons needed to be done, and yet you opposed saving the motor industry. We're talking about 1.4 million jobs, an industry that is at the very heart of this country's industrial base. and
but
yet
Martin,
you oppose that, and that's why people are asking this difficult question of you. Was this really about the sand on the shore, or was it simply about you chucking another earmark in? As you said earlier in this interview, you're quite keen on chucking freight onto the train, and so you did that, and of course the value of your house is now bound to go up.
Well, Martin, number one, the value of my house hasn't gone up. The security on coastal Georgia is protected. The more sand you have, that program's been going on absolutely for decades. Local match, state match, federal government involvement. But the one thing also I want to point out is your premise here is that the only way to save General Motors or the auto industry.
No, that's not my premise, sir. No, that's not. Sorry, with respect, that's not my premise.
Okay, well, I misunderstood you then, because I thought
sorry, I'll repeat.
I'll
explain my premise. It's very simple. You were prepared to pursue $6.3 million for a piece of land on the coast where your own house sits, but you would not support a vote to bail out the motor industry that has subsequently proved to be highly effective. We have now more motor vehicles sold in this country in the last month than in the last.
That's kind of, we always hear this from the left. Well, if not for the stimulus program, the unemployment numbers would be so much worse. If not for the bailout,
sorry, I've got nothing to do with either party, sir. I'm just asking you the question.
Martin,
I'm not interested in the left or the right.
Best to answer your question,
please
Martin.
do.
Here's the answer to it.
Please.
The bailout of the auto industry was not the only way to save General Motors.
No one has ever suggested that. No one has ever suggested that.
Martin, now I'm kind of hearing that from you.
Well, forgive me.
Had they gone through regular bankruptcy, they could have saved the job.
Right.
They could have paid off their debt or had it reorganized. And I think General Motors would be leaner and stronger today, probably would have bounced back a lot faster, and the precedent wouldn't be set. Remember, Martin, big business and big government love to pretend they hate each other. At the end of the day, they're absolutely in love with each other. They sleep with each other every night in this town. That's why I voted against that bailout, voted against the Wall Street bailout, and yet I do think that federal flood insurance is an extremely important thing. We spend billions of dollars on disasters, natural disasters that weren't caused by management and bonuses and CEO malfeasance and big unions, as you had in Detroit and Wall Street.
Just to end this interview, so I did speak to a realtor, and he said he thought your property would double in value. Anyway, thank you very much indeed.
Tell him I will list it tomorrow if that's the case.
Thank you, sir. Next, a presidential twist in the Super PAC fight. Seema Modi, though, first has the CNBC Market Wrap. Good afternoon.